The calm before the storm. The mysterious signal emerges. In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars shimmer like distant dreams, the great galactic empire sat peacefully. For years, the universe had been calm. The different star systems lived in uneasy peace, their borders protected by powerful fleets. But no one expected anything beyond the ordinary. The galaxy was a vast, well-established empire, and no one thought anything could shake it. But the calm was about to break. One cold, quiet morning, a mysterious signal was received by the Galactic Council, a signal from the farthest, most unexplored edge of the galaxy. It wasn't like anything they had ever heard before. The message was broken, fragmented, and the origin was impossible to trace. At first, the Council assumed it was a simple mistake, just a malfunctioning satellite or a strange echo from a distant planet. But as the transmission repeated, the tone became clearer. This was no ordinary signal. It was a warning. Across the council chambers, screens flickered with strange symbols and patterns. The signal was weak, but it carried a frightening message. It spoke of a human warship moving toward the center of the galaxy. It called it a harbinger. But the meaning behind the word was unclear. What was it trying to say? What was this warship, and why was it coming toward them? The council was thrown into a state of uncertainty. Humanity had always been considered a primitive species, living in small corners of the galaxy, mostly ignored by the more powerful alien races. They had no galactic fleet to speak of, no advanced weapons, and no reason to be taken seriously. Yet the message warned that a human warship was on the move, and it was headed straight for the heart of the galaxy. It was impossible. How could a human ship be capable of something so extraordinary? What was the council missing? The message itself contained no answers, only a single repeated warning. A storm is coming. The human warship is already in motion. It's not just a ship. It's a symbol of something much more dangerous. As the signal faded, the room fell silent. No one moved, no one spoke. It was as if the air had been sucked from the room, leaving only confusion and fear behind. The council members exchanged nervous glances. They had faced countless threats, alien empires, intergalactic wars, and even unknown creatures from the dark corners of the galaxy. But this was something entirely new. The unknown. The council leader, a stern and calculating alien with green skin, stood up slowly. His eyes scanned the room, looking for any hint of understanding in the faces of the others. His voice was low, but his words held weight. We cannot ignore this. This warship, if it even exists, could change everything. We must know more about it before it reaches us. We need answers. One of the younger council members, a tall being with multiple eyes, spoke up. The humans, how are they involved in this? We know nothing of their military power, and yet this signal suggests that they are more powerful than we thought. The leader nodded. We've underestimated them for too long. We assumed the humans were no threat. Perhaps they've hidden their strength, or perhaps they've developed something we're not prepared for. But if this warship is real, we must prepare for the worst. The council erupted into chaos. Some demanded that they send ships to investigate the source of the signal, while others argued that it was better to wait and see. But one thing was certain: their world, their peaceful empire, was no longer safe. A warship of unknown power was heading straight for them, and the galaxy's greatest minds had no idea what it meant. A decision was made. They would send a reconnaissance fleet to investigate the origin of the signal, to determine the truth about this human warship. But the tension was palpable. The stakes were higher than ever before, and every moment felt like it brought them closer to something far more dangerous than they could imagine. As the council members watched the fleet prepare for departure, the room was filled with a sense of urgency. The humans, once dismissed as insignificant, were now the center of attention. No one could predict what would happen when they crossed paths with this mysterious warship, but they all knew one thing for certain: the calm had ended. The storm was coming. The fate of the galaxy rested on the answers they would soon uncover. The warship's arrival. Days passed in anxious silence. The reconnaissance fleet was on its way to investigate the origin of the mysterious signal. Every ship in the fleet carried the weight of the galaxy's hopes and fears. But even as they ventured closer to the source, there was no sign of the human warship. The galaxy's leaders watched anxiously from their chambers, their eyes glued to the screens as the fleet moved through the dark, vast expanse of space. Then, it happened. A single small ship appeared on the radar, far ahead of the reconnaissance fleet. It wasn't huge. It wasn't an armada. But it was there, drifting silently in the emptiness of space. The Sentinel, the human warship, had arrived. The ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its sleek, dark hull seemed to absorb the light around it, almost blending with the stars themselves. Its design was minimal, yet terrifyingly efficient. It moved with unnatural grace, as if it was part of the void, flowing through the galaxy with a purpose that no one could understand. The only sign of its power was the immense, quiet energy it radiated, an energy that sent shockwaves through the minds of those who watched it approach. For a long moment, the warship did nothing. It didn't engage. It didn't make a move. It simply waited. On the Council's command ship, panic began to spread. What is it doing? Why hasn't it moved? One officer shouted, his voice filled with fear. The whole fleet remained at a distance, their ships clustered together in an attempt to make sense of the situation. No one dared to approach, not yet. Suddenly, a transmission came through. It was a voice, calm and steady, speaking in the universal language of the galaxy. The voice was unmistakable, human. "This is Captain Area of the Sentinel." The voice echoed across the communication system. "You are receiving our signal. We come not as invaders, but as protectors. A storm is coming. The galaxy needs to prepare." The words were cryptic, but they were clear. The humans weren't just a passing threat. They were here for something far greater, a warning. In the command center of the fleet, the officers scrambled to interpret the message. "Protectors," one officer repeated, his voice filled with confusion. Why would humans come all the way out here to offer protection? A moment of silence followed, heavy with uncertainty. The council was divided, but they all agreed on one thing. This warship, the Sentinel, wasn't something they could ignore. It was powerful, and its crew seemed to know something they didn't. Captain Area's voice came through again, this time more urgently. "The galaxy is not prepared for what is coming. We have seen it, far beyond the galaxy's edge, a force unlike anything you've ever faced. And if you do not trust us, you will all fall. We cannot stop it alone, but together we stand a chance." The words left the council speechless. What was this force? Who were these humans, and how did they know of a danger so great? For the first time in years, the galaxy's most powerful leaders were confronted with the terrifying unknown. And this unknown had a name: humanity. Back on the Sentinel, Captain Area stood at the bridge, staring out into the dark abyss of space. She knew her message had been received, but what would happen next was beyond her control. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders now. She hoped that the council would listen, that they would understand the danger that was fast approaching. But she also knew that time was running out. In the council chambers, the leaders stared at each other, their minds racing. Some were eager to work with the humans, desperate to learn what they knew. Others were hesitant, unwilling to trust a species they had long underestimated. The debate grew heated, but outside, the Sentinel remained still, silent. Then, without warning, the fleet commander issued a command. "Prepare to make contact with the Sentinel. We must know more. We must understand why they are here." The ships of the Galactic Fleet began to move, slowly at first, as they approached the human warship. The moment of truth had arrived. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance, and only one question remained. Could they trust the humans, or would the storm they spoke of be their undoing? As the fleet moved forward, a sense of dread filled the air. The Sentinel was waiting, and the storm was coming. The first confrontation. The galactic fleet moved cautiously, inching closer to the human warship, the Sentinel. It was as if the ship was both part of the universe and completely separate from it. The enormous fleet of alien ships hovered just outside its reach, their engines humming quietly in the void, unsure whether they should proceed or retreat. Tension was palpable as the council members watched from their chambers, their faces grim and filled with anticipation. The Sentinel made no move. It was as still as the darkness around it, almost as if it was waiting. For what? Only Captain Area knew. A scout ship was sent ahead to make contact with the Sentinel, a small unarmed vessel designed for communication and observation. Its mission was simple: approach the human warship, learn more about it, and return with answers. The mission was supposed to be routine, but nothing about this situation felt routine. As the scout ship approached, its sensors detected strange interference. The Sentinel's vast energy field was overwhelming. The closer the scout ship got, the more distorted the readings became. At first, the disturbance was subtle, but as they came within a few hundred kilometers of the warship, it intensified. The scouts tried to send a transmission back to the fleet, but their signals were jammed, completely blocked by an invisible force. Inside the scout ship, the crew struggled to regain control. "We've lost communication," one officer shouted as the ship began to veer off course, seemingly pulled by some unseen force. "What's happening?" Just as the situation seemed desperate, a sudden surge of energy from the Sentinel sent the scout ship tumbling out of control. The crew could do nothing but hold on as their ship was thrust back into the cold vastness of space, its systems malfunctioning. They managed to send one final distress signal before losing all power and communication. The fleet commander watched the scene unfold in real time, eyes wide with disbelief. "They've cut off contact, just like that," he muttered under his breath, a cold sweat forming on his brow. The fleet was in panic mode. The scout ship had disappeared, and there were no signs of what had happened to it. All that remained was an eerie silence. The council leader, a towering figure with scales like polished emerald, spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. "This human ship, it's too powerful. We cannot approach it recklessly. We must understand its capabilities first." The leader's words echoed through the fleet as the remaining ships moved into defensive positions, unsure of how to proceed. The reality was clear now. The Sentinel wasn't just an ordinary ship. It was far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen, and it seemed to have control over space itself. Back on the Sentinel, Captain Area watched the fleet's movements closely. She had been expecting this. The galaxy's leaders were afraid, confused, and reluctant to trust. She knew that the only way to truly make them understand the gravity of the situation was to show them. With a deep breath, she activated the ship's powerful engines, sending out a burst of energy that created a visible shockwave in space. The wave pushed against the fleet, but it didn't harm them, at least not physically. The shockwave was simply a demonstration of the Sentinel's strength, a reminder that it could take control of any situation. The fleet halted, unsure of whether to move forward or retreat. Then, Captain Area's voice came through the comms again, this time calm and firm. "I understand your fear. But if you do not listen, if you do not take action now, you will be too late. We are not here to conquer. We are here to protect. The storm is real. The predators are coming. You have no time to waste." The Galactic Fleet commanders exchanged tense glances. The power of the Sentinel was undeniable, but the truth of Area's words remained in question. Could the humans truly be trusted, or was this just another dangerous species with its own agenda? The decision was made. The fleet would engage in a face-to-face meeting with the Sentinel to get answers. But even as the ships moved into position, uncertainty gnawed at them. What if this was the beginning of a much larger conflict? Captain Area stood silently, watching the fleet approach. She knew what was coming. The next few moments would decide everything. The fate of the galaxy, the fate of humanity, and the fate of every living being in this part of the universe rested on their next move. The Sentinel was ready, but the question was the galaxy? Human intentions revealed. The fleet slowly approached the Sentinel, its ships arrayed in a tense formation. Each vessel moved cautiously, still unsure whether to trust the mysterious human warship that had appeared from the edge of the galaxy. On board the fleet's command ship, the officers watched intently, ready to react to any sign of aggression. The Sentinel, however, remained eerily calm, its dark silhouette looming in the distance, unchanged. For all its power, it did not make a move. Captain Aria's calm voice once again filled the comms, steady and firm. "This is Captain Aria of the Sentinel. We are ready to discuss the matters of utmost importance. I ask you to send your highest-ranking officers to meet with us. We have much to reveal." The council was divided. Some of the fleet commanders were eager to learn more, to hear what the humans had to say. Others were more cautious, wondering if this was some kind of trap. After a long silence, the council leader, the alien with green scales, spoke. "Prepare the meeting. We will hear what they have to say. But we will remain alert. There is too much at stake to let our guard down." Minutes later, the council representatives boarded a specially designed shuttle, heading toward the Sentinel. The air was thick with unease. The fleet commander looked out the shuttle's window, unable to shake the feeling that they were walking into the unknown and perhaps the inevitable. Upon arrival, the shuttle was greeted by a stark, cold silence. The hatch opened, and the council members stepped onto the deck of the Sentinel, entering a vast, dimly lit chamber. The interior of the human warship was nothing like the sleek, polished halls of Galactic Council ships. The walls were lined with harsh, metallic surfaces, and the air felt thick with energy. It was clear that the Sentinel was not built for luxury. It was built for war. At the far end of the chamber stood Captain Aria, her posture strong, her eyes sharp. She was human, but there was an intensity in her gaze that left no doubt in the minds of the council representatives. She was not someone to be underestimated. "Welcome," she said, her voice measured but commanding. "I understand your hesitation, but time is short, and the stakes could not be higher." The council leader stepped forward, his green skin shimmering under the dim lights. "We have heard your message. We still do not fully understand why you are here or what threat you speak of. You claim to be protectors, but we need more than words. We need proof." Captain Aria's expression softened slightly, but her resolve remained unshaken. "You want proof?" She gestured to the screens behind her. "Let me show you the truth." With a flick of her hand, the walls of the chamber flickered, revealing holographic images of a distant region of space. The council members gasped as the images shifted, showing a vast fleet of unknown ships, ships unlike anything they had ever seen. The vessels were massive, their designs incomprehensible, their sheer size terrifying. These ships, Aria explained, were part of an invasion force, a race of predators that consumed everything in their path, moving from galaxy to galaxy, leaving nothing behind but ruin and death. "The predators," Aria said quietly, "have been tracking our movements for years, and now they are coming for you." The council members were silent, their eyes fixed on the screens, unable to look away. The images were vivid and unmistakable. It was clear, this was no bluff. The danger was real, and it was approaching fast. "These creatures do not stop. They cannot be reasoned with," Aria continued, her voice tinged with urgency. "We humans have seen them before, in a far corner of the galaxy. We are one of the few species to have survived their attacks. And now, we are here to warn you. The storm is coming, and if you do not unite, you will be destroyed." The leader of the council finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "If what you say is true, then we have no time to waste. We cannot fight a force like this alone." Aria nodded solemnly. "That's why we came. The Sentinel and humanity are ready to fight with you, but we need your alliance. Together, we stand a chance. Apart, we all fall." For the first time, the council members exchanged looks of understanding. The reality of the situation had sunk in. They were facing an unimaginable threat. And the Sentinel, this mysterious human warship, was their only hope. "We are willing to work with you," the council leader said, his voice firm. "But we need to know what this warship can do. Show us your strength." Arya didn't hesitate. She motioned to the screens again, and within seconds, the Sentinel demonstrated its power. The ship's weapon systems activated, and a holographic display showed the precision and force of its firepower. A single blast obliterated an asteroid, sending shockwaves through space. The destructive power was beyond anything the Council had ever seen. "We have the technology to stop them," Arya said. "But only if you trust us." The Council members stood still for a moment, the weight of their decision pressing heavily upon them. Finally, the leader spoke again. "We will join you, but we must see this through to the end. The galaxy's survival depends on our unity." With that, the first steps toward an alliance were taken. The Sentinel had revealed its true purpose, and the galaxy's leaders had finally understood the gravity of the situation. The storm was real, and the fight for survival had only just begun. A test of trust. The decision had been made. The galaxy's council, once divided, had agreed to form an alliance with humanity. The threat of the predatory force was undeniable, and it was clear that only by joining forces could they hope to survive the coming storm. But trust would take time. Captain Arya and the council members watched as the fleets began to merge, preparing for the upcoming battle. The once distant human warship, the Sentinel, was now a central player in the galaxy's defense strategy. But despite their agreement, there was tension in the air. The galaxy's leaders were still unsure about the full extent of humanity's power, and even Arya could feel their doubts. A council representative, a towering creature covered in silver scales, stood before Arya, arms crossed. "You claim your warship can stop the predators, but we need to see it for ourselves. We must test your capabilities before we move forward. If we are to risk everything, we need proof." Arya met the creature's gaze, her expression unreadable. She knew that the council needed reassurance. They had their own fleets, their own advanced technology, and their own pride to protect. A display of strength was the only way to move forward. "Very well," Arya said, her voice calm but firm. "Prepare yourselves. This is what we're capable of." She signaled to her crew, and within moments, the Sentinel's weapon systems activated. A massive, dormant asteroid, drifting quietly in space, appeared on the ship's screens. With a few commands, Arya locked in a target. The asteroid, as large as a moon, was a perfect test subject. The council representatives watched, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. The Sentinel's engines hummed to life, and in a blink, a single energy blast shot out from the warship. It struck the asteroid with pinpoint accuracy. The impact was immediate, a blinding flash of light. The asteroid, once a massive, unyielding rock, was reduced to dust in mere seconds. The energy from the blast reverberated across space, sending ripples through the surrounding stars. The council members stared in awe. This wasn't just power. It was an unimaginable force, capable of destroying anything in its path. No alien race in the galaxy possessed such weapons, not even close. The Sentinel wasn't just a warship. It was a living nightmare for anyone who dared to stand in its way. "We can do much more," Arya said quietly. "And we'll need to if we're going to stand against the predators." The room fell silent. No one spoke, but the look on their faces said it all. The Sentinel was powerful, more powerful than they had imagined. And yet, despite this overwhelming display of strength, doubt still lingered. They had seen the destruction the Sentinel could unleash, but the true test wasn't in the weapons. It was in the battle that was coming. The fleet commanders were quick to regroup. "We've seen the strength of the Sentinel, but how can we know that humanity will follow through when the time comes? The predators are unlike any force we faced before. Can we trust that you will fight alongside us, not just for your own survival, but for the galaxy's? Aria stood tall, her face resolute. We didn't come this far just to watch others fight. Humanity will fight. We will protect this galaxy, not just because we have the power, but because we understand what's at stake. We won't let you face this threat alone. Her words were clear and unwavering, and the council members exchanged looks. It wasn't just the power of the Sentinel that mattered. It was the will of humanity to fight, to stand firm against the coming darkness. They had seen the humans' resolve. They had seen their strength. Now, the final step was up to them. Would they unite as one, or would they falter in the face of the coming storm? The council leader, the alien with green scales, stepped forward. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of their decision. We will fight alongside you, Captain Aria. The alliance is formed. But know this, we are in this together. If we fail, we all fall. Aria nodded, her face hardening with determination. We won't fail. Together, we stand a chance. Together, we will survive. With that, the alliance was sealed. The fleets were united, and the Sentinel would lead the charge. But the storm was coming, and no one could predict what would happen when the Predators finally arrived. One thing was certain, though, the galaxy's fate was no longer in the hands of its divided factions. It was in the hands of humanity, and the Sentinel was ready for the fight of a lifetime. The Predators arrived. The tension that had been building for weeks finally reached its peak. The fleets of the galaxy, once separated by old grudges and distrust, were now united under a single banner. Humanity, with their mighty Sentinel, had proven their strength, and the galaxy's leaders had pledged their allegiance. But no one knew for sure if their combined forces would be enough to withstand the true threat that loomed on the horizon. Captain Aria stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, staring out at the void. The stars seemed unusually dim, and the silence of space felt heavier than ever before. She knew the Predators were out there, somewhere, waiting to strike. The galaxy had no idea just how close they were. On the far side of the galaxy, beyond the reach of most space explorers, a vast fleet began to take shape. These were not the ships of any known race. The Predators had arrived. Aria's mind raced as she studied the incoming data. The alien armada was enormous, dwarfing anything the galaxy's fleets had ever seen. Their ships were grotesque in design, massive biomechanical creations that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Each ship was an abomination, designed not for elegance or speed, but for sheer, brutal destruction. The Predators had no interest in diplomacy or negotiation. They only sought one thing: to consume. As the fleets of the galaxy and the Sentinel's forces readied themselves for battle, the reality of the situation set in. This wasn't just a war for resources or territory. This was a war for survival. And the galaxy's survival would depend on how well they could stand against an enemy that was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Then, without warning, the first wave of Predator ships broke through the outer edge of the galaxy. Their massive shadows blotted out the stars as they moved in, like a storm on the horizon. The fleets of the Galactic Council, already stationed at key defensive points, were quick to respond. But the Predators were faster, too fast. "They're here," Aria muttered, her voice low and tense. "Brace yourselves. This is only the beginning." The Sentinel's engines roared to life, and the human warship led the charge, its weapon systems lighting up the darkness of space. The first few Predator ships were destroyed with a single strike, but there were too many of them. The vast, unyielding tide of Predators continued to pour into the galaxy, their ships more numerous than the fleets could handle. Aria's comms officer shouted from his station, "We've lost contact with the forward fleets. They're being overwhelmed." The Predators' shock tactics were swift and merciless. They didn't waste time with conventional weapons. Their ships unleashed devastating pulses of energy, erasing entire battalions of defense ships in a single blast. The galactic fleets were caught off guard by the ferocity and speed of the attack. Many ships were cut down before they even had a chance to retaliate. On the command ship of the Galactic Fleet, the leader of the Council stood in stunned silence. The once proud armada was being torn apart. They had never expected the Predators to be this powerful. The shockwaves of battle reached across the galaxy, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble in the wake of the destruction. The Alliance was already showing cracks. Some commanders, panicked by the overwhelming force of the Predators, suggested retreating to regroup. But Aria knew that retreat wasn't an option. The galaxy could not afford to back down. She had led humanity through this storm before, and she would lead them through it again. The Sentinel was humanity's greatest weapon, and she would use it to its fullest. "We have to hit them at their core," Aria said, her voice hardening with resolve. "If we destroy their command ship, we can break their coordination. We need to focus everything we have on that one target." The fleets of the galaxy, although shaken, followed the command. The Sentinel moved into position, taking the lead in the charge against the Predators. The battle raged on, explosions lighting up the sky as ships from both sides clashed violently. The fate of the galaxy rested on a razor-thin edge, and each moment brought new challenges. As the Sentinel closed in on the enemy command ship, the Predators retaliated with everything they had. The skies seemed to split open with the force of their weapons. One by one, the ships of the Galactic Fleet began to fall, their once proud designs shattered and destroyed. Yet humanity's resolve held firm. The final push was coming. Captain Aria's hands tightened on the controls, and with one final powerful order, the Sentinel unleashed its full might. A massive energy blast shot from its core, hitting the Predator's command ship dead center. For a moment, everything stood still. The massive Predator vessel trembled, and then, with an explosive force, it disintegrated, sending debris spiraling into the void. The Predators, momentarily stunned, faltered in their assault. The Alliance forces took advantage of this brief lull, rallying against the weakened enemies. The battle was far from over, but the first step toward victory had been taken. The galaxy had faced its greatest fear, and had fought back. The Predators were strong, but they were not invincible. As the Sentinel moved forward, leading the charge, Aria knew that this was only the beginning. The Predators had been struck a blow, but the war was far from won. The galaxy had to unite like never before, or they would face total annihilation. The storm had arrived, and now humanity would show the galaxy what it truly meant to fight. The final stand. The first wave of the Predator fleet had been driven back, but the victory was not yet assured. The Predators were relentless, and the galaxy's fleets were battered, their numbers dwindling with each passing moment. Captain Aria stood at the helm of the Sentinel, her gaze fixed on the chaotic battlefield ahead. The stars themselves seemed to burn brighter as the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. "We've struck a blow," Aria said, her voice steady despite the storm of destruction around her. "But they'll be back. We need to end this now." The Sentinel, despite its incredible power, was only one ship against an enemy force that seemed unstoppable. The Alliance forces had done their best to fight back, but the Predators' sheer numbers and destructive force were overwhelming. The enemy had lost their command ship, but their forces remained intact, fighting fiercely, driven by an insatiable hunger for conquest. The true battle was just beginning. As Aria scanned the battlefield, her mind raced. There was only one way to end this, one final gamble. The core of the Predator fleet remained a fortress of defenses, but if they could disable their command systems, the entire armada would fall apart. "Focus everything on their command cluster," Aria ordered, her voice sharp with determination. "If we break their control, their forces will crumble." The Sentinel moved toward the heart of the Predator fleet, its engines blazing with energy. The combined forces of the galaxy's fleets followed suit, rallying around humanity's warship, determined to push back the Predators one last time. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only chance they had left. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire," a crew member shouted. Shields are down to 40%. The ship shook violently as blasts from the Predator fleet battered it. The Sentinel shuddered, but it held together. Aria gritted her teeth, focusing on the task ahead. "Prepare the final strike," she commanded, a cold resolve settling over her. "We push through, no matter the cost." The Sentinel's weapons systems locked onto the heart of the Predator fleet, a massive, heavily protected command vessel. Its shields were impenetrable, but the Sentinel's weapons were more than capable of tearing through them if given enough power. The last of the Alliance ships gathered around the Sentinel, their weapons primed for the final assault. The Predators fought back fiercely, but the combined strength of the galaxy's forces began to make an impact. Predator ships exploded in flashes of light as the Alliance pressed forward. Then, the moment arrived. The Sentinel fired a massive energy beam, focusing all its power into one devastating shot. The beam ripped through the Predator fleet's outer defenses, striking the heart of the command vessel with incredible force. The explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, an immense shockwave of energy that lit up the void. The Predators' command structure collapsed, and their forces began to scatter, confused and disorganized without leadership. The remaining Predator ships faltered, losing their coordination. The galaxy's fleets closed in, picking off the disoriented enemy ships one by one. The tides of war had finally turned in their favor. But even as the Predators' forces crumbled, the battle raged on. There were still pockets of resistance, isolated Predator ships fighting to the bitter end. Aria knew that the final victory would come only when every last one of them was defeated. "Finish them off," Aria said, her voice unwavering. "We end this now." The remaining Predator ships, leaderless and scattered, were slowly destroyed, one by one, until there was no more opposition. The galaxy's fleets, battered but victorious, finally stood still in the silent void, the echoes of battle fading away. The storm had passed. The Predators were defeated. The Sentinel and the fleet came to a slow halt. The battle was over. The galaxy was saved, but at great cost. Many ships had been lost, and countless lives had been sacrificed. The galaxy's leaders, standing on the decks of their ships, felt the weight of their victory. They had survived, but the scars of war would remain. On board the Sentinel, Captain Aria allowed herself a brief moment of relief. She had led humanity through the storm. The Sentinel had stood as the beacon of hope, a symbol of human resilience and strength in the face of unimaginable odds. But Aria knew that the victory was only temporary. The galaxy was vast, and there were always new threats on the horizon. Humanity had proven its place among the stars, but they would never stop fighting to protect it. As the Sentinel drifted in the silence of space, Aria looked out at the stars, her gaze filled with determination. The galaxy was safe, for now, but humanity's journey had only just begun. "We've won today," she said quietly, "but we'll be ready for whatever comes next." And with that, the Sentinel turned its course, ready to face whatever challenges the future held. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do, and there was no turning back. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay.